Hey guys, my name is Max. Welcome to Austin. It's a beautiful Sunday morning here. Have Jackson over there laying in the sun. I have that big white boxer back there behind me. You guys might see him. Anyway, I have a really nice video planned today. Hope you guys enjoy it. Been working on it for like 3 days. All right. So is Roundhill going to drop like a rock? Then also want to talk about how to use these high yield ETFs in retirement. Could a guy live off of a $500,000 account if he was using these high yield ETFs? Or how well could he live or not? Then I was also going to talk about how to chase yield in a wise manner and then how not to do it. Okay, why did I say Roundhill's could drop like a rock? I mean compared to Defiance. And in a down market, it does drop like a rock compared to Defiance. Look at April. That wasn't even that severe of a pullback. It's just math. It's not an indictment on XDTE. They don't get as much yield, so there's not as much downside protection. That's all it is. It's the trade-off you make when you buy this fund. The trade-off is, though, they're badass on the upside. I think I said it's a monster on the upside before. But this boy, no, it does better on the way up, worse on the way down. Benefits from gap ups, gets penalized by gap down. So it's an interesting ETF. Realize that you're investing in the strategy, though. It doesn't have as much to do with Dave or Jay. Jay always says we let the market pick the strike prices, right? As soon as we read the prospectus, as soon as it comes out, viewers of my channel, we have a pretty good idea what this is going to do because I've usually run a couple of back tests or we get in the option simulator and we discuss what the path dependencies are going to be. And when I saw this one, I was like, this is going to be a monster on the upside because it's uncapped most of the day or most of the night. That study that people have known, day traders have known about that study for years. There's a study that said you could pretty much blindly buy the close and sell and short the open, and you do like 3 times as well as buy and hold. Anyway, this fund takes advantage of that phenomenon. Okay. All right. So there are ETFs that have more active hands-on management. I'm thinking T-Spy, Cy at Tap Alpha. That's I need to have him on the channel again. KQQ, Howard, same thing. Need to have him on the channel again. These guys are more hands-on with the fund. Same thing with JEPY. These ETFs right here are more system-based. I'm not so sure I don't like the system-based better because I like the system-based. It takes human emotion out of it. Now, I put Defiance, Yield Max, and Roundhill on there, and I realize that they aren't totally system-based. They do, Yield Max especially, they do choose their strike prices. Sometimes it's, they're maybe between 2 strike prices, and so they make the decision to split it. I'm not saying the managers don't do anything, but their hands are somewhat tied by what they put in their prospectus and what the market gives them to work with. So I'm saying these are the more systematic, if that's what you prefer, and that's what I love, and that's why I love these. I'm always talking about these, right? Okay. But this is an ass kicking on the way up. This is the trade-off. Just know what you own. When you own XDTE, you potentially can do way better on the way up, right? I mean, that's true. But 2 things can be true at the same time. All right, so I get the comment all the time, these ETFs suck. Generally, maybe meaning Defiance and Yield Max. I think they're misused. I would agree they suck when they're used the way a lot of people are using them. I respect the opinion of this viewer, and he said that he thinks people have unrealistic expectation of these funds. I would agree. And he believes other influencers are giving advice that isn't sound. And in the last interview, Jay and Rod made it seem like SPY-T would be now stable. I believe they did say now stable. But, and he's saying, that can only be true if the market gains 20% a year, which is not likely. Okay. So this guy's referring to one of my rules of investing in these high yield funds. If whatever the ETF pays out, whatever yield it is, the market has to be up at least that much, if not more, for the fund, to have truly stable NAV. He's just saying you can't bank on 20% up every year. And he's right, you can't. My response would be that fund, SPY-T, has stable-ish NAV, maybe very stable compared to other funds in its class. But yes, it's not truly stable. I mean, only when the market's up 20 or 30%. Now this year the market's up 29%. So this year it is stable. But yeah, this year's kind of an outlier, right? It's not up this much every year. Okay. And that's what he said also. He said most run reduced during the huge bull market. And he's right. People that are investing in these that shouldn't be, at some point they'll have a margin call or they'll figure it out, hopefully before then. But I would agree also. I don't think these are going to be as popular in 5 years, because one thing I think we might go into a multi-year bull market again. And especially in that case, these are becoming less attractive because of the T-bill element. Okay, so I get the comment that I suck all the time also. So this is a good one. Hey, Max, I know you're hustling for dollars. Got it. You're wrong about Defiance. You tracked their zero DTE options. They lost a lot. You were still cheerleading them. Triple QY lost. We both know it awful. So first of all, in the hustling for dollars, you got to be kidding me. I never even say like and subscribe. I don't even have an e-guide. I don't even have a Discord. I have no stake in people. If you want to watch my videos, watch them. If you don't, I don't even beg for likes and, and subscriptions. So, but the other thing on the substance of what you say, what do you mean they lost a lot? So let's look. So they've been triple QI is the one he mentioned. They've been open a year, right? So we can see who was right. I looked at this. I've been following this every day since late November. There's been 124 up days for triple QI, 60 down days, right? All right. So, I mean, they've had an average, not an average up day, but an average overall of $93,000 positive, which is 5 basis points. Over the course of a year, that's 1.3 cents per share. And they're paying a 52% yield. I don't see what's not to like. Yes, they did burn through 19.79% of their NAV. Correct. That is correct. I mean, it's something you have to factor in, but I'm going to show you how to deal with that in the retirement simulator. I don't think I've taught people enough how to deal with it. So I've been effective at teaching it. I think I made a new teaching tool today that will hopefully help understand kind of how to use these funds. We'll see. Okay, so just to see that I wasn't BSing, I also pulled it up on their way of doing it. They actually have more than me. They have that it's up 13.72%. This goes actually back to the start. That's on total return. So, and that's a year, and it's paid a $31 dividend on a $60 stock. So I mean, to me it's performed, as So no, it hasn't been a dog, and I don't know it. I mean, but anyway, that's cool. But the thing about me carrying water for Defiance, now that's also funny because I actually came out with the video 6 months ago, and it was called the True Yield. What I did, I factored out any type of NAV burn, any type of bad stuff that happens. Doesn't matter what you call it. I factored it out, and I figured out how much actual money would be left over. And I said 8 to 10%, because I don't believe in free money. I want people on my channel to, to know what's going on. If I was pandering for dollars, I'd tell everyone to go all in. Or I'd make a channel that said these suck. But the truth is somewhere in between. So anyway, we're going to look at some of the nuances today. All right. So Defiance is a year old. Like I say, the true yield was actually 12.79%. It might have been a legitimate criticism to say, hey, you told me 8 to 10%, and it really did 13%. I sold because of you, Max, and you said these wouldn't be as good as they actually were. Is actually what happened. True yield's the truth serum. They've had excellent true yield. They've had excellent yield. Yes, the NAV burn is there. It's something we have to know about and deal with, right? And that's what we do on this channel. It's not my fault people go all in. I know a lot of people, and really everyone that watches my channel that I know uses these correctly. But anytime a corporation puts out something, people are prone to misuse it. But I don't think it's the corporation's fault to protect us from ourselves. I don't believe in governors on cars or limiters, whatever you want to call it. It's not Cool Whip's fault that people suck the nitrous oxide out of whipped cream cans. it's not Tide's fault. People eat Tide Pods. All right, but let's review what I've always said about these, and let's review the kind of the rules of how to use these and not get burned. All right. So the most important thing is only if you really need the income. If you don't really need the income, so if you're 30 and have a job, 40 and have a job, 50 and have a job, in my opinion, you don't need the income, right? Maybe there's extenuating circumstances, and we'll talk about a couple of those at the end of the video. But if you don't really need the income, then a lot of the stuff the critics say about this is true. Usually what the critics are talking about when they're critical of these funds is what they're really saying is they're talking about people that use these and don't need the income. And yes, that's no good. You don't want to do that. All right. So no more than 20% allocate these high yield funds. Talk to your planner and preferably spread the 20 between 4 or 5 funds. Give it time. When you allocate, it's different than a trade. You don't check it every 5 minutes like you do a trade. You check it maybe once a quarter, maybe even once a year, because you're looking at performance in a broader term on income investing. This is boring type investing. Okay, so only with money you're going to invest anyway. This has about the same risk as an index fund, a little less really, but it has a little less reward also than an index fund. All right. So don't just abandon growth and chase yield. Also, don't cash in your 401k and go all in on these. Please don't do that. In fact, don't allocate more than 20, maybe 30 at the most. Okay. And be prepared to reinvest a portion of the dividends either back into this fund or into something else, some way of hedging it, or maybe even buying stock in the underlying of the high yield companies so you don't lose so much upside. But you have to be prepared to do that. You have to realize the two-thirds of the dividend isn't really spendable. Okay. And if you can spend it, but then you might have some other bad things that'll happen. All right. And don't forget there's implicit decay and explicit decay. So anytime you aren't fully invested in growth, you're costing yourself future money. And growth is so much better than income, because on growth, you don't have to pay taxes on it. It grows. And that's why if you don't need income, and when you're making an income and you're in your high tax bracket, you just keep earning an income, piling your money into growth, right? It grows. Well, then you retire and your income isn't what it used to be. And then your taxes aren't as high. And by then, hopefully you've had a lot of growth. But yes, anytime you take money out of that to get income or do anything else for it, you're costing yourself future upside. It's almost always better, especially when you consider taxes. So especially if you don't need the income, just don't mess with these. All right. So like I said, review them maybe once a quarter. This is like hiring an employee. You aren't going to fire somebody on the first day generally, or it's like putting some renters in an apartment. You're going to give them a year and then you're going to review it. It's similar to this. Okay. So let's say a person wants to see if they can get $5,000 a month to live off of, but they only have $500,000 saved. We'll call him Joe. His wife wants to stay home from work. Okay. But they need $5,000 to replace her income. So in the old days, they couldn't have swung it. They would have had to sell off assets. She would have had to do a part-time job. I just know based on doing this for 20 or 30 years. And I'm telling you, in the old days, it was not necessarily doable. At least not with as little risk as you can do it with nowadays. All right. So we'll also look at the 60-40 allocation, and we'll look at a few alternative scenarios. When these funds first came out, I did say they would change the way people retired. And I did also say they would partially annuitize your retirement, and both of which were true and have continued to turn out to be true. But I believe this is especially true for middle-class retirements of like $500,000 to $1 million. What I was going to say is the wife could get a side job. Back in the old days, you would have had to have a side job. All right, so we're going to do something else on that. All right, so let's get into the retirement simulator. Proud of this simulator. I've been working on this for like a week now or something. All right, so what I wanted to do, whenever Defiance turned a year old, I wanted an apples to apples way to go back and look and see what good stuff happened to your account. If you would have gone all in on Defiance, what bad stuff, and just so what I did is I built program where you can go back and you can back test allocations. So let's look. This is average Joe's portfolio. He has 500,000 to work with, right? So here's what let's just say right now, this is what him and his wife are in. They're in all growth. And a lot of people are in all growth. So if you went back and you were in all growth last year, this is how you would have done. You'd be up 29%. This is the actual price a year ago, and then that's Friday's close. Also, if there was any dividend paid, it shows up in income. This is how many shares you could have bought. Okay, so that just shows you how a person would have done all growth. But they couldn't have gone back a year and been all growth and replaced her income, because it only comes to $474 a month after taxes. Important to figure taxes. A lot of people don't figure that, and a lot of people don't talk about the NAV depletion either, but we're going to cover that. But this allocation, of course, has no NAV burn. Okay, so then the next way to do it is 60-40. And this is a very common way too. Lots of people on their 401k, target funds. This is basically 60-40. Okay, well, that's fine, because when you have put 40% in bonds, you have 2,800 shares of bonds. You have a little bit less growth, granted, but bonds pay more of a dividend. So you have $7,000 of income, and then you still get $4,700 of dividends from the SPY. The SPY pays a 1.5% dividend. So, okay. So right here, it's a little more reasonable. It comes to $11,000 over the course of a year, which after taxes is $8,000 or $9,000, which is about $7,000 or $700 a month. Okay, so you can see we have to be more aggressive. So now let's do 60 and then 20 in bond, and then let's put 20 in like a high yield bond to try to make a little bit more. That's a very common thing financial planners will do. I used to do this with people all the time. You can also put it in REITs. There are things you could do back in the old days, and that would get us to 900. Call it 1,000 a month if I would have gone into the REIT too. But then let's get more aggressive here. So let's leave the 60 in the SPY. 60-40 growth is kind of a benchmark. But instead of bond funds, let's get some income from high yield funds. So XYLD and CLM have both been around forever. Cornerstone, XYLDs, these are old funds. This is how many shares we could have bought. This is what the NAV would have done over the course of a year. But this is what the yield would have been. So if we'd done something like that, we could have made $1,800 a month. Okay. So that's also not going to be enough money. Just going back a year and looking how it would have turned out. Not to mention we burned through a little bit of NAV, but it was only 1%. Okay, you've heard about the 4% rule. This burn rate down here is the modern day 4% rule. You don't want to burn. It's the same. It's the same thing. It's a very similar concept. So anyway, but the same concept is the same thing goes. You want to do as little as possible, but you want to be aware of what happened to you. So on this one, I mean, $31,000 income is nothing to sneeze at. That's $1,800, but we're going to have to get a little more aggressive. All right, so let's leave the 60 in the SPY. Look at this. Now let's put 20 in SVOL, 20% in SVOL, 20% in JEPY. This is the main reason I built the simulators, to test JEPY, but I decided it's cooler to make it be able to test a lot of stuff too. But so this is what I would call an aggressive allocation, but this is like something people that watch my channel do. This is tactical, so this would be a little more aggressive than I'd recommend, but because it's 40 anyway, but whatever. So, it's to each his own. So let's see what would have happened to somebody like this. So you can see the JEPY paid hella dividends, and so did SVOL. So altogether, the dividends come to 60,000 after taxes, 43. 3,500 a month, so he could probably replace that. Once you get to this kind of range, you could probably replace the salary. Now you have to remember though, you burn through 6.31% of your NAV. That doesn't mean how much you'll burn through next year. None of this stuff projects anything. All of this stuff just goes back a year and looks what would have happened if you would have done this. So in this case, this person with this portfolio would have had about a 6% burn rate. Okay, so that, that's a little high, but I mean, perfectly acceptable. So, you know, in my opinion, touch your own planner, but be aware it's happening. Less is better if you can. That's why if you don't need the income, it's better. It'd be better to do this. If you could get by an $1,800 a month, it's much better to do this, because look at the difference in the NAV return. The NAV return on this plan is 17. The NAV return on this plan is only 11. And it's just because they put more of it into these high yield funds, right? And the high yield funds bleed a little bit of money. At least even SFAL bled a little bit of money. It factors it all in. You know, SFAL was at 23 a year ago. It's at 22 now. It's not a big deal, but it's just something we have to be aware of. And it's why we probably wouldn't go all in on SFAL or JEPY, right? All right, this just kind of gives us an apples way to look at it. Okay, so now let's look at this. So here's same Joe, $500,000. I forget what I did on this one. Oh yeah, this is an extremely aggressive one. I like it because it's diverse. What I did on this thing is I put the more aggressive funds are at the bottom, the more stable are at the top. So growth is SPY and SCHD. Then we have bonds, fixed income. Then we have covered call ETFs that aren't very risky. So I put them towards the top of the simulator. But right down here, all of these at the bottom, you have 10%, 10%, JEPY, 10% at Tesla, 10% at Coney. How do you think we're going to do? Pretty damn well. How we would have done. Now, the good news is we could have made $6,000 a month, which is insane after taxes on only $500,000. You could not do that before. That is insane. The downside of it is you burn through 11% of your NAV. Okay, so this may be a little too aggressive. You could maybe do this for 1 year or something if you just talk to your planner. But that would be what I would consider, you know, maybe double the 5% or double the 4% rule is 8%. Maybe no more than 8% burn rate. That's going to be Max's rule. But 11, that's a little bit too high. But anyway, so that's fine though. Let's say we don't really need $6,000 income. Well, that's a good situation to be in. On the other hand, my next slide said, wonder if I spoiled because I went ahead. Wonder if your second ex-wife's third son needs to go to rehab for the 4th time and you've agreed to help him out. Can you swing it if you only have this kind of portfolio? So wonder if basically this kind of guy, you just need as much as possible, consequences be damned. Let's kind of see what you can do here. And I'm calling this kind of the bad way to yield chase, but what a person could do if they wanted to. It's free will. So, okay. So this guy, let's just say he needs as much as possible. Consequences be damned. So let's just go 0 there. So we'll take it all out of growth and let's just put it all into, we'll put it all into JEPY, right? All right, so you could darn sure do this. You could darn sure do this. You earn 39% dividend. Do you want to burn through a quarter of your NAV? That's why I built this, to look at apples to apples. And that's just how I would have done last year. Like I say, the burn could be a little bit different next year. Nothing is projected. I just took the burn and then I divided it by your overall portfolio. If you have $500,000, you can't afford to burn off $133,000, in my opinion. You got to tell that kid to quit, you got to tell him he's got to pay for his own rehab or something. You got to quit getting married because, but in theory, that would be what I would consider a bad way to do it. Now, let's say you're a loving guy and you're going to try to swing it, but at the same time, you don't want to hurt your kids you have now or the heirs or whatever. So let's just go from 60 to 50. Okay. All right. Now, and let's go, instead of 50 in here, we're going to go 30, okay? But then we're going to sprinkle in 10 of the most risky funds. I put in there Coney and Tesla, one good one, one bad one. I thought it'd be a fair representation. I didn't have Roundhill in here because it hasn't been out a year. I bet I get the comment, hey, why didn't you include this or whatever? These funds that are in there had to have been out a year. So what, Tesla and Coney darn sure were. So An allocation like this would be aggressive as hell, but you wouldn't necessarily be spending all of the next generation's money by taking it out of SPY, or all of your future retirement money by doing this. And I mean, but let's see. And that's my opinion. Let's see what the math says. Okay. Well, the math, 16% is still probably too aggressive. 16% burn, but you can make a lot of income if you did that. So what I would do, watch this. What I would do is you would do this to 60. You would do, for a little bit more stability, you would do 10 on SFOL. Well, basically 10 on all of them. The way I had it the first time, that's actually, if you're crazy but not too crazy, that actually is not, it's still 11% burn. So if you want to fix that, that's what I like about these funds. It's like make your own. Jay was comparing it the other day to Chipotle. If that's too much for you, let's mix in 10% of JP Morgan into the mix. Okay, now you're at a 6% burn. I said the rule is the 4% rule says you can actually sell 4% of your assets, which I think is crazy, because if you have to sell assets, there's a tax consequence and you can never get those assets back. I like this method of doing it, where you synthetically sell part of your assets, and you have opportunity loss. And I mean, this isn't perfect either, but I think, I don't know. We'll see. I'll be anxious to listen to everyone's comments. Okay. The burn rate on this one is only 6.28%. So that's, that's doable. All you would have to do to make it a little bit more doable, put 20 in here, and then just put 5 in Coney. You put as little as possible in the higher yielding ones. Well, yeah, something like that. Really, really do something like this. SFOL is a great fund. Something like this, and then you're even, look at that, 5%. 5% burn rate. I think that's sustainable. $3,500 a month on $500,000 is not bad. Okay, so anyway, I hope you guys like my new simulator. Let me show you here's another way to look at it too. All right, here's Max's portfolio. All right, here's a 60-40 portfolio, right? $2,900 a month. No burn, but could you live on $2 million on $2,900 a month? Probably, but for some people, it might not be enough. All right. So what can we do? Let's go 60, 20, 20. That's what I said in that slide. That was my first suggestion. So 60 in SPY, 20 in bonds, 60, 20, 20 in some very stable NAV ETFs, low risk. See, if a person went with the stable, low risk ETFs, and I put 10% JEPY with JP Morgan, 10% XYLD, you can make $3,900 a month on 2 million, where the person that's just 60-40 could do $2,900 a month. Depends on what you need, because if you do it this way, I mean, it depends on what you need, because there's more risk when you take more income. Okay, now here's a more aggressive way to do it. What about 60% SPY, 20% bonds, and then 20% in JEPY on a bigger account? That would be $400,000, but it'd be no more than 20%. So if somebody did that, watch my channel and went back a year ago and did that, here's the results. That the NAV would be up 13% right now. They'd made 38% dividend return, about $11,000 a month on $2 million. It's a lot of money, but look, it burned through $100,000 of capital. On a $2 million account, it's 5%. Is that too much? It depends. Obviously, if you don't need $11,000 per month in retirement, you could go with the more stable ones. Now, the problem is, wonder if you needed more than 4,000, but you need less than 11, right? All right, here's kind of a compromise. Here's 60% SPY, 20% bonds, Here's 10% in JEPY and 10% in SVOL. That's a very common tactical portfolio. Now, good monthly income, the burn rate's a little higher than I'd expect. It kind of surprised me how high the burn rate was. So if you do that portfolio, beware. Now, here's just a crazy off the rails way to do it. So 60 stock, instead of 20 bonds, 10 bonds, and then put extra in these funds, 20 in JEPY, and then add 5 to Tesla and 5 to Coney, just to kind of yield chase. You could do that, and you actually got away with it pretty good. Your NAV was up 34%. Your overall dividend was 64%, making $20,000 a month if you would have done something like that. Unfortunately, you burned through 31% of your NAV. So we wouldn't advise that, but let's see what else we got here. Okay, here's an even worse way to do it. Here's a way burning through 42% of your NAV. I was looking at some alternative. I looked at this one, 50% in SPY and then 10% in SCHD just to get some stability. But then I put 30% in JEPY, 5% or JEPY, 5% in Tesla, 5% in Coney, $24,000 a month. All right, but let me show you where so for the middle class retirement, you can see how a person could allocate and go from like $4,000 to, you know, pretty easily $3,000 spendable money, somewhat spendable money, right? On an upper middle class retirement, a $2 million portfolio, the 60-40 portfolio may not be enough for some people. What I was trying to show what you can do with just a sprinkle. So look at this one. Wonder if you need more than 3,900. So look at this. We can, if you take the most risky ones, and you know that they're going to probably have NAV decay. A year ago, we knew that Tesla and Coney would be the most likely to have NAV decay. We didn't know which would be it, but 20%. So I need an extra 5 and something. Okay, so this is what I would consider a smart way for this guy to chase yield that needs a little bit more money, but he's not trying to break the bank. Put in 5% of Tesla and Coney. Let's see what would have happened to this guy. Yeah, he would have come out pretty good, pretty well. But the burn rate's a little too much. The problem is any amount of Tesla you put in last year, because Tesla ended up burning through $50,000, and you're getting penalized for that with this metric. I mean, the metric just calls it like it sees it. If you have a loss, it puts it in the. If you have a NAV loss, it puts it right there. So yeah, 11%. That's probably too aggressive, even when you mix in JEPY. So maybe you do it like this. When you have more, as you have more money, you can take less risk. Of course, you guys understand that. All right, so I messed that up somehow. All right, this is what I would call more reasonable. This way, you made $7,000 a month. You had a NAV return of 70%. Now that won't happen every year either. That's because of Coney. Coney's in there helping your NAV return out. But on the other hand, Tesla's in there detracting from your NAV burn. So you had an 8% NAV burn to make $7,000 a month. You can see as well as I can, you and your planner can go over what ifs forever, but the idea is to use as little as possible of the risky funds to get the return you need and not a penny more, and to try to leave the rest of it up here. I'll do more what ifs and other videos with this technology in the coming days. But anyway, I thought that'd be interesting to look at. But especially I think it's interesting because we're a year old. That's what I would call a statistically significant amount of time to judge these Defiance funds on. And they haven't been perfect. They create a lot of problems with the NAV. So you have to be aware of that, and you have to be judicious and tactical. But if you are, maybe you can help your second wife's third son go to rehab for the 4th time. All right, guys. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Leave me a comment. I'll try to read them. Have a good one.